Hello, you're welcome to Leadership in 30 Minutes. Olatunji Sobodu is my name. Thank you for joining me once again today. As our custom is, and by the way, I hope you checked out, on my YouTube channel, there's a discussion there that is titled, What's Your Custom? You may want to check that out. I think it would really be a blessing to you. So today, Leadership in 30 Minutes, we'll be focusing on an interesting topic. And it's a counsel to you and I not to lead by our own rules. Don't lead by your own rules. Don't lead by your own rules. That's what we'll be talking about today. Um, Now, this, I believe, is a very important, subject to examine, particularly in this day and age, where we all generally have a tendency to just do things our own way. We like to do things our own way. Many of us feel comfortable doing that. Many of us do that maybe because we want to assert ourselves, or we want to demonstrate that we have what it takes to be able to succeed our own way. Now, I'm going to be quite specific, to the subject of leadership, and to show that an attempt to do things your own way is simply looking for trouble, seeking to waste your time, um, positioning yourself, to make the wrong impact. And you wouldn't want to create problems for yourself. You wouldn't want to create problems for yourself. Leadership is a calling that has rules, and it's important that we abide by those rules. One of the interesting principles I used to teach leadership is the parable of the sower, which everybody can relate to, by the way. I mean, you and I eat today, and if we eat, then we know that most of what we eat is grown, and there's a way that those crops are grown. And it's a basic principle, is the principle that follows the parable of the sower, is the principle of seed time and harvest. Now, you can't want to take advantage of a seed, and yet you want to do it your own way. You want to do it in a way that you ignore the principles that are laid out in that parable. All right, there are principles to follow. It's not the time to start figuring out how you want to do it yourself, what soil you need to plant on, and all of that stuff. Why? Because it's already a settled issue, and it's settled for your own benefit. So what you need to do is to sit back, learn what the principles, that have been settled are, and operate by them. And operate by them. That's how, to deal. That's how to win. That's how to succeed in most things. That's what it takes. That's what it takes. Now, many times when we want to do things our own way, when we want to lay down our own rules, it's probably one of a couple of things: pride, an unwillingness to submit to proven principles, to proven ways of doing things. Indiscipline almost always, hangs around in the corner, and all in the name of we're trying to be independent, you know. And somebody said, if it ain't If it's not broken, don't fix it. If it ain't broken, don't fix it. Somebody says you don't want to change a winning team. There's a reason. I mean, you and I are not the first. We won't be the first to do leadership. All right. Leadership has been there since the days of Christ and even before his days. All right. So at best, we have the principles, of Christ to follow. Why do I want to follow my own rules? When somebody has practiced, a set of rules, have proven that those rules work, what I need to do to be as effective as that person, to make as much an impact as that person, is simply to learn those rules and to put them to use. And you and I know that, of course, I mean, from the point of view of leadership, Jesus was an extreme success. All right. And by the way, you know, this is brought to you by Emmet Leadership Academy, where I serve as the founder and CEO. And for us, is leadership nurtured by truth. So what you hear from us is the truth, and the truth is as found in the Word of God. And so when you look at Jesus, whom we always make reference to, all right, to make our point, you see that, you learn the rules. Even he did not operate by his own rules. Even he did not operate by his own rules. He was smart enough to know that, yes, he was who he was. He was the Son of God. He was a leader, but he didn't operate by his own rules. Well, I hope you feel comfortable with that. But if you don't, let's examine a couple of things. Let's examine. I will throw up about 5 or 6 different things just to try and make this point. And it's a pretty detailed, stuff, but you will try and do it quickly within the time that we have. Let me start by one of the first things that, one should make reference to. It is written. I love this subject. I love that phrase. It is written. It is written. It almost seemed like a popular phrase, that Jesus will fall back on. And if a leader fell back on that phrase, it's important to try and find out why. And so he operated by what was written. He operated by what was written. So he didn't just do things by himself. Many times, in fact, he made reference to what was written. So he was operating in relation to a playbook, all right, where there were rules. That's what he was operating by. So a time came, in Matthew 4, 3 to 10, we often make reference to it, when the devil showed up. He says, well, you say you are the Son of God, all right? You are the leader, isn't it? Okay, prove it. So to speak. Now, I'm basically paraphrasing here and giving a sense of, how I'd like to look at that encounter. And I call that encounter the test that every leader must go through in order to confirm that you have what it takes to lead. If you can win on those 3 levels were tests of leadership, competence, capacity. All right. And they had to do with whether or not you would abuse your power or authority, whether or not you would abuse the privilege to lead, and whether or not you would abuse your position. Or if you like, will you be loyal? All right. And it's not piece of cake, I guarantee you. It's not piece of cake. And anyone who would lead and who would turn out to be a good leader must pass those 3 tests. Now, let's come back to our issue. Every time, Jesus was presented with a challenge, what he said was, it is written. It is written. So he was operating according to rules that were written, according to rules that he was very clear about, according to principles that were captured in those rules. He wasn't just running around, doing things or relying on some supernatural, endowment to provide quality leadership, indeed, to live his life. One thing was constant: the 3 times that the devil put a challenge before him, his response was the same: it is written. It is written. What was written? Was he the one who wrote them? No. What was written? Were they, did they carry any authority? Yes. At least in that context, they represented the word of God. They were proven. And that's like, the principles that are written today that are in place for you and I to do leadership right. There are principles that are written. So we are not allowed to go running around trying to do our own thing. We are supposed to anchor our approach, our conduct of leadership to a set of clearly proven principles. So I'd ask you, if you are a leader, what principles guide your leadership conduct? What principles do you fall back on? What is it that is written that you fall back on as you do leadership or as you provide leadership? The saving grace for Jesus when push came to shove was what was written. And by the way, in other instances, he often will say, "Is it not written?" Or, "Haven't you read?" Read from the same playbook. Okay? So, why are you playing by your own rules? Number one, it is written. Number two, and I found this pretty interesting. Even Jesus himself in John 5 and verse 30 said, "I can of my own self do nothing. I can of my own self do nothing." That's the leader. At least he had a solid team of 12 that grew to 70 plus, 120 plus at some point. And this leader was saying, by myself, I can't do anything. He was saying, what I do is according to what I hear. Is according to what I hear. I judge as God tells me to. Again, can you see? He had an anchor to his practice of leadership. His practice was anchored to a clear set of principles. It didn't, it didn't mince words about it. There was nothing for him to be ashamed of. He said, before you start thinking that I'm some superstar, let me point you to where I am operating from. I am operating according to a written set of principles that I have taken the time to learn, that I pay attention to. And so I'm not just doing leadership arbitrarily. I'm not depending exclusively on my own theories or my own ideas. That's not the way to succeed in these all important responsibilities. The lives of the people that are saddled, that are put in my hands, they are too great for me to be trying, to adopt a trial and error approach. Now, what is written, the principles that you have learned, they are not trial and error. Okay? They're not trial and error because they have been proven. Because they have been proven. He said, I can of my own self do nothing. Or if you like, I can do nothing on my own. I have taken time to learn how to get this thing done, how to do leadership right. And so the things you see me do, the way that I interact with my team is based on the things that I have learned. That way, I am sure that I'm going to succeed in this assignment. Anything short of that will be gambling with the lives of the people. And that's not something that any true leader should do. That's not something that any true leader should do. You don't gamble with the lives of your people. You don't gamble with the lives of your people. So you see that now, leadership doesn't lend itself to playing by your rules, to doing it your way, as many of us would like to do. There's a limit to the independence that you can exercise. If you must exercise independence, let it be on top of the, have the foundation as your foundation as the principles that are proven. Your foundation as the principles that are proven. Let me show you something also. And I look at this as a third issue. The parables as a guide. Parables were used by, Jesus. He taught his people using parables. He taught his people using parables. He never taught without using parables. When you look at Mark chapter 4 and verse 2, we're told that, he began to teach his people again using parables. He began to teach them again using parables. Why is that instructive? It means if the leader teaches using parables, you and I need also to follow the same route. Now, it means we must understand the parables, we must know the parables, we must understand them, we must understand the principles that the parables, espouse. Because parables are basically told as stories to convey core principles of life. So this leader operated based on those core principles. And part of his conduct was to teach the same principles. So he taught his people, he developed his people. If you like, his team was the product of his parables, the teaching of his parables. So inside those principles, those parables are the core principles for doing leadership right. And I would argue that if you will undertake a deliberate study of his parables with a view to understanding the principles behind each of them and how to apply them to different areas of life, you will be a very effective, a strong and very effective leader. Because first of all, you are no longer going to lead by your rules. You are going to lead by a set of proven rules. And by the way, it makes leadership easy. It makes it easy for you to lead by principles that are clear. All you need to do is to learn those principles and including how to apply them. When you do, you see how the way you lead will draw from those principles. And the good thing about principles is that principles tell you what you must do in order to get what kind of results. Principles have no respect for anybody. Anyone who fulfills the requirement will get the promised result. All right? Is a sure way of running the race of life, is a sure way for, succeeding in any endeavor. If you have something you want to do, if you're appointed to lead a team, what you need to find out is what are the core principles that make leadership work. All right? And leadership working is developing the people that have been committed into your hands and getting them to do, impossible things that they never believed that they could do. Earlier this week, I spoke on Leadership Monday. I spoke on, how to make the impossible happen, make your team achieve the impossible. You may want to check that out. I think it would be a blessing indeed. I spoke specifically about the key of encouragement, that if you can lay hold on that key, if you know how to encourage your people, you will see them perform feats that you never imagined they could, perform before. All right. And that's still part of what we're talking about. It's not because I said so, it's because I learned so and I have practiced it. I know that it works. All right. So I'm not guessing when it comes to what to do to make your team from laggards into high flyers. There are things to do and they are proven. I don't have to start thinking about them. I don't have to start figuring out how. I don't have to decide exactly how I want to do it, except, of course, to do it according to principles that I was intentional about learning. That's how to do it. That's how to do it. So it's important. And by the way, if you're interested in an adventure into the parables of Jesus, join me in the Profit from Parables Bootcamp. It will be starting, I think, sometime in June. We still have spaces, and we'll be walking through all those parables to draw out the principles, to show how to apply the principles, and then challenge you to anchor your approach to life, and indeed any specific area, to those principles that you learned. And let's see whether you will not get results that will blow your mind. I know that the results you will get from that kind of initiative will certainly surprise you. So I challenge you, join us for that. So that's the number 3 thing to talk about. If Jesus was a product of parables and he taught it as part of his approach to leadership, relying on the principles therein, because the relevance and the value in parables is not in the story, it is in the principle that they espouse, okay, that they teach. Now, if his approach to leadership was that anchored on parables, why do I want to do it differently? And he produced a team of people whose impact you and I are still enjoying today. We're feeling the impact of just 11 men. All right. One went haywire. 11 men. All right. And some of the others, look at their impact. And that's the kind of impact we can make with our team, even today. But what's the missing link? How do you want to operate? You think that is possible by following your rules? No, sir. But that's possible by following rules that have been written, that are captured in those parables. And the beauty is that we have the privilege, today, that we can refer to them. We can study them. We can unveil the secrets and the secret principles, and we can put them to practice. And certainly we can get results. If we can plant seeds today and reap harvest, then it means that every single one of those parables, they still have relevance today. If that parable of the sower is still real today, if we see it work today and we see it work, then every other one is relevant and they are as potent as the first one. There isn't one that is more important than the other, although some are foundational. If you don't understand some, you can't understand others. It doesn't mean the others are not important. It just means that there is a link between them. Now, these are the things that you need to learn in order, to be able to do leadership the way it needs to be done. All right. So that's the number 4 thing. Number 4 thing I'd like to say. Let me talk about That's number 3. Number 4, I'm trying to quickly cover the grounds here. I talk about the issue of tradition, and look at it as, is liberty for indiscipline and arbitrariness. What does tradition mean? Let me back up a bit. There's a set of leaders that you don't want to be like. You never want to be like them. They are hypocrites. If you study the Bible carefully, if you looked at the way Jesus did his thing carefully, you would see that he had a set of people, who he always had problems with them. He always referred to them as hypocrites. They were Pharisees, they were the scribes, and they were lawyers. And what was part of their problem? You see that they love to uphold tradition. And in actual fact, it did say that it wasn't, you will think that they are sincere, but they are insincere, because what they do is to teach, he said himself, is to teach the commandments of man as though they were commandments of God. So it's like saying the way some of us as leaders teach our own preferences, put forward our own, the things that we are sensitive to, and we put them forward, we teach them as if they are principles. Our preferences, our convictions are not infallible if they are not anchored on principles, if they are not anchored on truth. And when we try to do that, we become hypocrites like that. It's liberty for indiscipline. Why? Because these character of leaders were fond of demanding from their people what they will never do. Now, how can that kind of approach produce credible leaders? It's impossible. The moment you replace your rules with rules that are proven and they are available and they are tested, particularly in the area of leadership, you are going to fail, because you are going to have the impact you would have, let me put it that way, the impact you would have on the people that you lead will be contrary to the impact that is expected to be made by a good leader. You can't replace your rules, however seemingly elegant, or sensible they may be, with proven rules. You can't. And if you do that, in fact, in some sense, it's fraud. Okay? If you do that, in some sense, it's equally, a fraudulent attempt. All right? Now, let me, talk about one more thing. And I don't want to be like a Pharisee. Okay? And many of us should not be. But unfortunately, many leaders are not authentic. I think the fifth point that I mentioned is that you should not be arbitrary. There is no scope for arbitrariness, when it comes to leadership. If there are proven principles, why should we be arbitrary? If there are proven principles about how to get this job done, why do we want to be arbitrary? Why? Why do we want to use any other thing? Why not just do things exactly the way they're supposed to be done? Let me make a reference to you, a reference to something that transpired. And this will give you a sense of what leadership is about. Leadership is about continuity. Leadership is about one leader developing others into leaders. And so to that extent, leaders who are developed are meant to carry forward, All right, the same principles that were used to develop them. And there was something that struck me, and I totally agree with it. When you look at, the case of Joshua and Moses, and, after Moses died, Joshua was the successor. Joshua was like the one, that took over from him. But you see, if you look at Joshua, chapter 1 and verses 7 and 8, and it says something like this. It said, only be strong and very courageous, that you may observe to do according to all the law which Moses commanded you. Turn not from it to the right hand or to the left, so that you may prosper in everything that you do. Can you imagine the charge that was given to the successor leader, from one leader to another? He was warned. He said, look, you need to be very courageous and bold. It's not the time to play by your rules. Play by the rules that were handed over to you. It means that you had the privilege of exposure to training by somebody who understood exactly what it took to develop leaders. And I was being asked, don't vary the things that you have had. Don't trample on the principles. Don't bring in your own rules in a way that they undermine the principles that you have been taught. The principles are the guarantee that this endeavor will succeed. If you violate them, you're on your own. If you violate them, you are on your own. He said, look, these rules guarantee that you will prosper in whatever it is that you do. In this leadership assignment that you have been called to, if you follow these rules that you have been taught, that have been handed down to you, they guarantee success. They guarantee success. Your rules don't guarantee success. At best, there will be trial and error. But there are proven principles. There are proven rules. Others have applied them. They worked. Yes, you can say, okay, things are different. But can I shock you, or remind you rather? We're told that there is nothing new under the sun. And I'm not aware that principles really change like that. Okay? It doesn't mean that principles don't leave room for innovation. Don't get me wrong. But innovation, creativity must be built on the foundation of principles. Not to set aside principles and try to do things, afresh or your own way, or just to reflect what you believe. The safe thing is that what you believe, all right, should draw from what is proven. Should draw from what is proven. And let me leave this with you. So while we're at it, take a look at what verse 8 of Joshua 1 says. He said, now this book of the law. So in the area of leadership, he's saying that those rules that you are taught, those rules that have proven, the kind of parables, for example, because the parables, given the fact that they are principles, they are like a book of the law. They have always been there. They will always be there. You can make reference to them. He said, don't let them out of your sight, out of your mouth. He said, meditate on them day and night. Observe what you must do. That is, how do we make them work? How do we implement them? He said, they will make your way prosperous, and you shall have good success. Why do you want to lead by your rules when there are proven rules to lead by? When there are proven rules that others have engaged and they worked. And they worked. All right? And they worked. All right, sorry, I think the email was the email that was sent out said 11:30. My apologies, but once once you are done, you can please go on the YouTube, my YouTube channel, Olatunji Sobodu, where I believe you are probably watching from, and you can watch, the full recording again. So my apologies, please. But thank you for joining, us all the same. Thank you. You are welcome. We're just, on the verge of rounding off. So you can see that, you want to do leadership. There are rules that help you to succeed therein. There are rules that help you to succeed therein. There's a program that we have, is a 30-day program. It's called the Smart Leader Program. And, that program is over a course of 30 days. It will really sort out a lot of things for you in the area of leadership. It will really sort out. It's on daily basis. You get a video, 30 minutes, that deals with a specific aspect of leadership. It's like walking you through the what leadership is all about. At the end of it, a number of the rules would have been delivered into your hands. A number of the rules would have been delivered squarely into your hands. So there are rules. There are rules about how to do this thing and how to do them well. And for avoidance of doubt, like we said before, the rules, are also proven and tested. And we, in particular, are not just led by experience, we are led more by, insight from the Word of God about leadership. And there is no better, no more credible leader than Jesus himself, All right, so I've spoken about what is written, why, and how strongly Jesus anchored his approach to what is written, why he relied heavily on what is written, because what is written is proven. What is written, he could run with. They did not reflect his rules. They reflected, something that carried greater authority, greater power, that had been tested for many years. We also talked about the fact that even he said, look, I can of my own self do nothing. I would rather not do anything, but instead, I would listen to those, who have what it takes, whose approaches are sure, are certain, and I will conduct my business, in that manner. And then number 3, we also spoke about, parables as a guide, and the power of drawing from parables, of anchoring your approach to leadership based on parables. You may never have had this before, but I laid the foundation for it. I'm very clear in my mind, because that's something that a profound leader operated by, and it's not trial and error, is a combination and collection of principles, and he succeeded beyond what anybody else has achieved, over many years ago. And then, don't be a tradition we talked about, that don't be like the hypocrites, who put their own ideas forward as if they were proven, when in fact, there were proven ideas that they ought to have run with. And that if you do that, you'll be playing by your rules and you won't have a good story to tell, and leadership is too important, because the lives of people are involved, to play trial and error with. So don't be arbitrary also. Is almost a consequence of all that we've been talking about. Because if you are not following a set of rules, no matter how well thought through, you believe your ideas to be, or your rules to be, there is no guarantee that they will succeed. Why do we want to go that route when we have others that have been proven over many years, thousands of years, and we know they work? And that's what you too should go back to. So if your rules derive from those principles, then that's fantastic. That's fantastic. But in that case, it means they are not really your rules. They are sitting on a more sure foundation. They are sitting on a more sure foundation. And the last thing I would say is truth. Is truth. Your rules are not truth. They may be true, but they are not truth. And the leader is obliged to play by the truth. To play by what? The truth. John 17:17, Jesus made a very important statement. He said, sanctify them by thy word. Thy word is truth. So you see the importance. All right. That truth is not yours. That truth was referring to settled principles on the subject area. All right. Settled principles on the subject area. That is the truth. And he said, that's what will set these people apart as the kind of leaders that we're trying to build. Because in that entire chapter, he was rendering his report card on his leadership, because that chapter only dealt about what he had made of the disciples, the people that God had given him to prepare, to continue the work after he was long gone. So he said in that, John 17, he said, sir, I have completed the work, the assignment that you gave me. And in the process, he said, sanctify them by the truth. Thy word is truth. And before he said that, he said, I have given them your word. I have given them your word. That is, I understand this business. I've been following the things that you taught me. I've been operating by principles. I gave them your word. I know what your word is capable of doing to them. I know it takes your word to prepare them. The word of the leader is important. The word of the leader, I keep saying, is the most powerful instrument for doing leadership. And that word cannot be founded on anything short of the truth. It can't. It must not. It has to be the truth. And where do you get it from? You are not the custodian of the truth. You have to look for it and apply it. So your rules, there is no scope for you to operate by your own rules. Let's quit thinking that, we can become self-made. There is no self-made leader. There is no self-made anybody. And there is no need to be self-made. There is no pride in being self-made. In fact, if there is anything like self-made, you will be a danger to the people you lead instead of a savior. Why? Because the principles by which you would operate, they are not tested. They are not proven. And the life of nobody should be exposed to that kind of leadership. I think it's a good place for me to stop. And I hope today you have gained something as well. And I hope you would go ahead and do the needful. Join me again on Monday. On Monday is Leadership Mondays. For 10 minutes or thereabout, we'll share another nugget that can help you over the course of your week. Last week, I spoke about, the power of encouragement, how to make your people do the impossible. So if you check the channel, you will see the video. You can watch that, and you see many more videos as well. So please go ahead, feel free, enjoy, the various videos. Don't forget to make your comments, give us a feedback. We'd like to have feedback. I enjoy feedback. If you want me to speak on anything, in particular, you can also just, let me know in the comment, and then I'll do my best to address that particular subject as quickly as our itinerary can accommodate it. It's been Leadership in 30 minutes today. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please go ahead and subscribe. That way you get notification, before the event, and you'll be able to prepare yourself to attend and to maximize, the time spent with us. Also, check the description. We have a couple of programs. If you found this useful, if you found any other video useful, I bet that you would find some of those programs useful. There is the Profit from Parables event, which I talked about earlier. You may want to check it out. There's also the Ask to Win challenge, and that's a powerful one as well. I also talked about the Smart Leader program. If you get exposed to that over 30 days, is at your own time. You watch the videos at your own time. You have unlimited access to the videos, but I guarantee from the responses that we have had from people who have gone through it, there is no way that it won't change you. It won't build your capacity to lead. And if there's something the world needs today, starting from the country where I am, Lagos, Nigeria, it is leadership. It is leadership. But like I challenge each one, let's stop looking for people who are savior leaders. Let the leadership begin with us. All right? Let the leadership begin with us. As we learn to do leadership right, as we apply it at our levels, in our spheres, that's how we begin, to develop the kind of leadership that will be of great benefit to us as a society, to us as a nation. So you have a role to play. As you play your role, we start, correcting this shortcoming, and we start addressing this challenge. So again, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you for spending time, with me this morning. God bless you, and bye-bye.